Okay, well, thanks for joining us today. This is our last one of the day, and it's called Finance and Distribution. We've got the gurus of finance and distribution here today with us, and Harris is going to moderate, so enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Do you have a nice day today? A lot of good seminars, yeah? You're waiting for the essence, right? You're waiting for the essence. Okay, so first, we have to thank Greg Reitman for helping to put this together, and his staff and colleagues, Diana and Carolyn. So thank you very much for that. In a minute, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves, but I always like to ask questions about the audience. It's not that big, but how many students are here today? One student. What happened to all your colleagues? It's Friday night, right? Yeah, I get it. Any writers here? Writers? There you go. Writers, directors? Okay, good. Actors? Okay. Directors of photography? Yeah. Composers? No? Production designer? Producers? Okay. Most important question. Any investors in here? There you go. All right, we're going to talk to you later. Okay, so I'm going to let Elisabeth Costa de Beauregard introduce herself.
Thank you, Harris, and hello, everyone. Very nice to be here today. I have been in the business for about 26 years. I run a company called Storyboard Media, which is a partnership between myself and another gentleman out of Vancouver, Canada. We produce and distribute, doing sales for our own films as well as third-party films. We do all different types of budgets, from micro budgets, which are under $1 million, all the way up to about 40 million. And hello, Josh. And we formed Storyboard Media in 2017, and COVID was an interesting time for us. But we've definitely had some great films in the past 7 years. Harris has been really a partner with us, given that he does legal and he knows everyone in this industry. And prior to that, I was at a company called Lakeshore Entertainment for about 14 years, and I ran it the last 3 years of my tenure, and then Voltage for 3 years, and then Ambi for a couple.
Did they just buy something?
They just bought the exchange.
Yeah.
Yep. So
consolidation.
A lot of consolidating happening in our business, of which I'm sure we will tell you a lot. And but it's a pleasure to be here. About 300 films under my belt. And kind of insane. I was like, I can't believe I've been in the industry for over 25 years now, which is great. But I will let you.
Paul Poste.
Hello. So let's see. Right out of college, I ended up at MGM Studios as a non-theatrical sales assistant. At the time, I was like, what is non-theatrical sales? But I was basically helping the non-theatrical sales guy sell movies like James Bond to the airline and cruise ship market, military, colleges, stuff like that. Then I transitioned over to Sony Pictures, where I ran the department for airlines and hotel pay-per-view worldwide. I handled movies like Jerry Maguire, As Good as It Gets. I handled Mad About You and Seinfeld television series. And then in 2000, I decided to set up my own company and basically handling independent films. So I go to the major film festivals where I see people like Elisabeth and others, and I buy rights to their films for the airline and cruise ship market. And so I've been doing that for 25 years on my own. I've handled movies like Gosford Park, Monsters Ball. More recently, just before COVID, I handled Bombshell. And I've worked with Woody Allen for 24 years, handling all of his films that come out. COVID was definitely a really hard-hitting thing that happened to our business, but we're getting back on our feet again.
Okay, Josh Edwards, partner, Fox Rothschild.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? So my name is Joshua Edwards. I'm a partner at a firm called Fox Rothschild. I actually got my start in the business back in 2006 on the representation side. I started out in the mailroom at the Will Morris Agency before working my way up the ranks. I eventually became a talent agent, then a talent manager, working with writers, producers, actors, and directors. And so I've served as both a talent agent, talent manager, and before I eventually took the California bar exam and started being a talent lawyer. And I joined the firm, initially was at a smaller firm called Pierce Law Group, where I headed up the talent department and started doing production legal. And then I became the production legal department by myself until Fox Rothschild deemed me worthy and came and poached me away from that firm. And so now I do talent and production legal, and I do everything from soup to nuts and on the production legal side, from production finance to distribution. And this is my second career. I initially was a district attorney. My second career, I initially was a district attorney in the Bronx for 4 years before I came to California and started working in the mailroom.
Well, it was a nice choice you made, I think, instead of being in the trenches in New York City, right?
Much to my mother's chagrin.
Yeah, well, we get that. So listen, I'm going to do a brief, and excuse me for doing that, but I'm going to do a brief overview of different types of financing that could be available for films, television programs, et cetera. And then we're going to get into some questions about that. So primarily for the films in this festival, documentaries, you could go to government organizations, which, by the way, who knows if we're going to get any more grants from government organizations now, but that's another topic. Nonprofit organizations, film institutes, public television, again, who knows what's going to happen with public television. And we saw a beautiful documentary last night that was financed by the BBC about the Arctic, right? Was that your film? No. Okay. Well, anyway, it was really nice. So, you know, the BBC, right? Other international public broadcasters. Then you have tax incentives, and we have something in the United States called Section 181, where you can actually invest money in a film and then get a deduction on your other income that you are getting from other sources. So that's a big deal in terms of trying to raise finance from private investors. They have these, they call them schemes in Europe, in Belgium and in the UK and in Canada, in Italy, and also in the United States, in Georgia, New York, New Mexico, other places. Then they have cash rebates and subsidies. That's different from a tax incentive. Cash rebate is when you spend money in a jurisdiction and the government actually gives you a cash rebate for spending money in that jurisdiction. It can be as much as, in some cases, up to 40, 45, I've even heard 50% so of the budget. So it's, let me say, qualified costs. So it's, there are definitions involved. But anyway, that's a good source. Then, I don't know, for these kinds of films, you know, we can talk about this later. Sometimes you can get a pre-sale, a co-production agreement, and raise money through the sale or the partner production company that you make a deal with. Then with respect to any studios or broadcasters, network streamers, they have the concept of the minimum guarantee, where you say you're going to make this movie. When you deliver it, you will get your minimum guarantee. So that's another thing that's, you can create an asset and you can borrow against that asset because it's something that's collateral that you can borrow against. Then there is something called gap financing, which is a kind of a risky, high-interest loan, which is against future revenues from unsold territories. And, you know, that one's a pretty risky loan, but sometimes we know some people who've made those loans. Probably they regret it now, but, but anyway. Also, there's private equity investors who just invest cash into your film. Fiscal sponsorships, obtaining a nonprofit status of your company and being able to make films, you know, as a nonprofit and get donations. And also using what they call administrative relationships, where you partner with a nonprofit and you use that nonprofit to collect your funds, and then that nonprofit will take a small fee and then give the funds back to you. There's crowdfunding, where you put together a pitch deck, promotional materials, you go online and help promote your project and start to raise money that way through Indiegogo, GoFundMe, Kickstarter, and others like that. And then there are things like product integration deals, where if you have a particular product or service that's related to your film, you can sometimes get a contribution in cash or other assets that you can use for your film. That's a good way to get some money for making your films. You have soundtrack album, music publishing, where you can pledge all of my soundtrack album rights and music publishing rights and get an advance to pay for your music. So that's something that we do. We've done that on our films. And then there are things like in-kind donations, where if you have food or computers or cell phones or cars or boats or whatever that you're going to be in your film, sometimes you can get contributions from those brands to put into your film. Then there's always the hated deferment, where the producer has to defer his fee or her fee, or the director has to defer his or her fee. Writers and actors and producers sometimes have to do that. And then there's something a little different. Payroll companies now, because they're advancing funds and they're putting up bonds for guilds, will sometimes advance funds that you have to pay them for payroll services or bonds that you need for guilds. So there are a lot of different sources of financing to try to put together to get your film made. And I'm going to run through just a few of these grants. There are hundreds of them, but I just wanted to put it out there, and if anybody wants this list, come see me after, give me a card, give me an email, and I'll get you this list. But I'm just going to run through them quickly because it's relevant to what we're talking about today. The International Documentary Association has grants, Mountain Film, the Schmidt Family Foundation, Vital Impacts, the Redford Center, the Fledgling Fund, Sundance Institute, Ford Foundation, Tribeca, Bertha Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, National Geographic. It goes on and on and on. What? Okay, there you go. Prince Albert, by the way, Prince Albert has a fund. Anyway, I'm not going to keep going on and on. I want to get to the panelists. So I'm going to ask any one of you who wants to answer, who could answer, because it's hard. Have you used any of these methods, or known of people, or some of your clients have used these methods to finance the kinds of films that we see here at the Blue Water Film Festival? Anybody?
You mean documentaries?
Kind of.
The list that you have, I haven't had any of my clients use any of those.
I'll give you the
grants.
list.
But that's good to know.
Yeah.
But I have obviously used gap financing, investors, equity, pre-sales, and mostly on an international level, usually get international pre-sales to borrow against MGs. So yeah, I've used all of those. Well, my clients have used all of those. And there's different risk profiles associated with each.
I'm in the process right now of producing a film with Sean Ellis directing. And we tossed off the script and lookbook to Sky from the UK for this weekend for them to review. And they're going to come back next week. And the idea is for them to come to the table with $4 million or so. That's what they're saying. And with that, they would get the UK broadcasting rights and then help close that gap.
What's the budget for the film?
The budget's $10 million.
Okay.
We're
It's a
hoping
nice
to.
chunk?
Yeah, it's a nice chunk. We're hoping to get $4 million from Sky. We can get $4 million or so from tax credits because we're going to be filming in Ireland. It's a true story. So from Screen Ireland or Northern Screen.
Boy,
And-
we should give you our structure. That sounds like something we did already. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're hoping to close the rest of it with either giving it to a sales agent to do pre-sales or something to that effect.
Got anything for us?
Yeah, we've definitely done, with documentaries, no. Those are usually, I actually have a documentary here, and yes, we had the Redford Foundation support us. Not 100%, but they gave us quite a bit of money to do the film, so that was great. Our doc is Let Them Be Naked. Also, James Cameron and Susie M.S. Cameron, they put in a good chunk of change, because obviously it's a topic which is very, very dear to their heart, and obviously the part of their legacy that they want to leave behind. As we know, James Cameron, Avatar, was in a huge environmental piece, advocating both for the environment, animals, etc. So yes, as far as documentaries, it's really the only doc that I've ever done. But I did one other one called Barely Legal about marijuana and hemp, CBD, etc. But I've done predominantly feature films, and with that, in addition to almost everything that you mentioned, which I have used.
We used it on our films.
I think I've done, yes, probably just about everything, and I actually do the pre-sales. So as a sales agent, producer, not a distributor, but I have access to a whole array of distributors and very, long-term relationships as I started in '99. The model has changed a bit from that because it used to be that you could finance an entire film on pre-sales, and it's not the case anymore because times have changed. But that being said, the one I think that you may have left behind, unless I dazed out for a minute, was also post-production deals.
Yes,
Sometimes when you
absolutely.
go to a post house,
Yep.
they might be willing to
Absolutely.
put up money in exchange, of course, for them doing the post. And then what happens is that they usually are part of the waterfall. Any of these, aside from grants, people, if they can, or they'd like to get their money back, that's always the idea. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes these tax schemes, to which Harris was referencing. Sometimes it's if you are a high net worth individual and you need a tax break anyway, you'll be super happy if the film makes money, because then it's more money in your pocket. However, if you don't make money, it's a tax write-off against your other earnings, and so therefore that is a sort of a win-win. It's a three-win, because then of course the filmmakers and all the people who have gotten jobs from that film are all very thankful. But there's definitely a lot of ways to make money. But I know there's I'll just leave it quickly, a very fun joke. It's like, what's the fastest way to become a millionaire in the film industry? You start out a billionaire. So that's just one little thing. But yes, all useful.
Okay, I'm going to throw this one to Josh. So you're advising a documentary filmmaker who wants to use some of these types of financing, I'll call them schemes. That's what they call them in Europe. I don't know why, but financing strategies, right? And and I know every person is different, but generally, what's a good way to set yourself up so that you can actually receive money and use the money to make your film?
Well, most people utilize what we call a single-purpose entity, and most of the time it's in the form of an LLC, limited liability company. And because you want to make sure you have some type of corporate structure to receive the money and a bank account tied to that structure as well, so that the person who is deploying the money to the project knows that it's going to the project and not going into your pockets. You never want to commingle assets, right? Because each project has its own asset and liability that comes along with it. And off chance some knucklehead in the future sues your project, you want to make sure that the only available asset to them is the actual project itself and not anything else. And a lot of people will have a production company that's already an LLC or a corporation, and they'll ask me, well, why can't I just use my already existing LLC, already existing production? Why do I have to set up a separate one? And the answer to that is you never want to commingle assets, because each project, like I said, has its own asset liability. Sometimes, depending on what kind of money you're receiving, you want to set up two different projects. You want to put the copyright into the film into one LLC, and then set up another LLC that receives the money, but all put it under the same holding company. Because a lot of times, people who are lending money to a film, they want some type of equity into it. So they'll ask to be a managing member of the LLC, by default making them an equity owner. But if you make them a managing member of the LLC that's just receiving funds, and not of the LLC that actually has the copyright to the asset, but put them all in the same holding company, you kind of kill two birds with one stone. But that's a trick to the trade that I could talk about later.
Yeah, we've had to do that, that's for sure. Okay, so I'm going to ask Elisabeth to tell us, what does a sales agent do? How do you do it? And how do you enhance the value of a film once you pick it up?
Well, again, more with features, but obviously with docs too. So because I've got the relationships with distributors around the world, and when I say distributors, that also includes VOD players, all the streamers, free TV, pay TV, and also exhibitors. So, and then the independent distributors who, in a country-by-country basis, they have their own relationships with, let's say, their local VOD players, things like that, of many of which, no one's ever heard of. So by having and managing all these relationships from around the world, both in the US and abroad, and again, these are relationships that have been built over the last, quarter century. When I say, listen, I'm taking on your film, I've done, so many, and some of which have been horrible films that I maybe took on, and they were not of the best quality. They didn't turn out as everyone would have hoped, but also 2 Academy Award-winning films and a franchise and whatnot. So I've got a lot of diverse product under my belt, so to speak. And like I said, between the different types of budgets, I've got a good handle and understanding on which buyers, which distributors want to work with which type of pictures. And so if I come on board and take it, I apologize for the crickets. I was like, I apologize for the crickets. I'm just going to turn those crickets off.
I was going to say, wow.
Yeah, my bad. So what happens is, because I've got these relationships, distributors do not like to be usually accessed by directors, producers, whatnot, because there's already it's a niche industry, however, it still is quite a few sales agents out there, and, which again, over time, you build up a trust, a relationship, et cetera. And if all of a sudden producers also look at each movie as a child, understandably, and it takes, forever. But if they start accosting the distributors and saying, hey, look at my film, blah, 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 it's my job to go in there and say, listen, I think this is going to be right for you. This is why. Let's negotiate onto the terms that will be best for you and for the filmmakers, where it's equal and as fair as it can be. And I'm an agent helping a producer get their film out, and getting the various distributors around the world to listen, really be active about looking at a film, and doing best we can to get it out into the marketplace. So that is what a sales agent can do. And there's many different types of sales agents out there, and it's really also a personality type in addition to a reputation and longevity, how long they've been in the business, who they know, all this stuff. So, but ultimately you want to be able to get along with your sales agent. Not like, oh, they're my best friend, but they're not going to work, but also at the same time you want someone that you can just, okay, you understand, there's a good respect between the two, and that you can trust for the most part. They can pick up your calls, they can, things like that. So I help also, super vast, when there are festivals, whilst that's really on all the producers to really manage themselves, I am there definitely as a how can I guide within the festival, depending on, is it a very high tier or a lower tier? And can we help you get press releases out? Can we help you just do the best that we can to get your film, out to the public?
So if you're a filmmaker and you got your film made, what's the best way to find and approach a sales agent?
Great question. I think the best thing to do is actually, start, I'm trying to think of how people actually find us. There are different markets around the world.
Well, you go to a lot of markets too.
That's,
AFM,
yes,
Sundance.
exactly. So there's a lot of markets around the world, and the sales agents definitely attend those. I do 4 of the film markets, which are, AFM, the American Film Market, which is in November, Cannes Film Festival in May, the Berlin Film Festival in February, Toronto Film Festival in my apologies, Berlin and then Toronto in September. Those are the 4 that I always attend. And then there's different festivals, which I occasionally attend, being like Sundance, Tribeca, South by Southwest. I used to do more, not Busan, because we were just talking about Busan in Korea, but there's different film festivals, Hong Kong Film Mart, which is a market and a festival, and a couple others, Venice Film Festival. But it's really, the festivals are more of the showcasing of your film. And then if you get in, as long as there's going to be distributors there, that's when I will say, okay, I'm going to go with a film to a film festival to make sure I can really speak with buyers. If they are smaller film festivals, sometimes it's more difficult. Most distributors don't want to do that. And in this day and age, a lot of distributors, the one things they don't have are time and finances the way they used to. The golden age is, there's a golden age for streamers right now, but it's very, very tough for a lot of the distributors around the world. So they much prefer to see a link of a film instead of going and taking their time out to come to a festival and look and be part of that excitement. Unless it is truly the premier ones like Sundance, Toronto, South by, Telluride, which is more like, Academy Award stuff, very, very few films get in, and Tribeca. I mean, there's a sense, there's excitement, but if you're not in those, kind of top tier film festivals, distributors really won't be going to them the same way. Just because they have so much work to do in-house, so many films to screen, that there's just not enough bandwidth, I think, for these companies anymore to do it. And they are going around the clock trying to, discern which films are going to be best for their buyers and their relationships and whatnot. And then at the same time, they're also figuring out, okay, if they want to take something out theatrically, it's also tons of energy and, physical, emotional, financial that goes into trying to, how do we, prepare this film to get out into market, to make sure all rights are cleared, there's no issues that can come up
You
with
can deliver the film.
with chain of title, with different legal documents of which you do know very well. So for them, it's like once they finally get through all this process of trying to get the film out there, then they have to also figure out how to actually bring the audience in, right? And there's a whole amount of money that goes into marketing the film and getting it out there. So them going to a film festival is really like them going on a vacation, in which they don't have time for. And that's why it's only if it is a premier film festival, That's where the distributors go. And that's where they really go to see the films. Now, films that can usually have already been bought, unless there was kind of a more interesting, more European focus. And then Toronto, Sundance, I think South by. Those are probably the three, okay, and Tribeca, the four that really, you'll have a lot of distributors go there, and they'll go and watch, premieres or certain territories which have been unsold, they'll go and watch there. And there it can become a bidding war, which is exciting. That's basically what happened with The Brutalist. Everybody passed on The Brutalist, right? The Adrian Bodie film that just won. Everyone passed. And then, it got invited to go to Venice. And this, because the filmmakers pre-screened it. And everyone was like, nope, they got one tiny offer. And they're like, shit, that just sucks. They're like, you know what, let's just go to
Who was
Venice.
the sales agent on it?
A24.
Was it
Yeah.
A24 sold their own film?
No. They came on board
After.
at Venice. I'll think of who it was. But anyway, so they decided to just, you know what, we're going to roll the dice, which most people, I always say, don't roll the dice. Not in this climate anymore. But when it goes to Venice, they ended up loving it, standing ovation, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, every review came out incredible. This is a 3.5-hour film, right? So, because you're really taking a chance. And they did. And then there was a huge bidding war. And then A24 ended up getting it. And
Even
that's far from, that's not the everyday, that's kind of lightning. But it used to happen way more. Now it happens every now and then. What were you going to say? Sorry.
I was going to say, even at Sundance, most of the film, and Tribeca, most of the films are already pre-sold as well.
They are.
Which is like why Slam Dance came about, because it was like Sundance isn't truly independent anymore.
Exactly. No, it's also very, very political, these festivals. So, sometimes really good films, you submit your really good film, and you're like, why didn't it get in? But something else got in that you're like, that's not nearly as good. But it's political too. So.
A lot of politics.
Very.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was talking to one of our mutual friends at Vertical today, and she said,
Kristen?
it wasn't Kristen, it was the other
Rachel.
one. Yeah, Rachel. So I said, well, you must have been at South by Southwest. She goes, no. He goes, I can screen the films here.
Yep.
Why should I schlep all the way down there for 5 days? And
100%. Yep. Roadside, same thing. I was just on the phone with Angel, and
So,
yeah.
but once in a while.
And isn't that sad? You work so hard to make a film. You're like, it's going to be shown on the big screen. And then you're like, no, wait, the distributors, the buyers aren't going. Like, no, just send me a link. Send me a link. That is our business today. It's crazy. And it's all
And then,
about
by the way,
fast
what are they
accessibility.
watching it on? Are they watching it on a phone? Are they watching it?
No, never a phone. They don't watch it on phones. At least I hope not. Oh, no, but Josh is not buying. He's enjoying. Or being like, oh, no, they really messed up.
So, Paul, this is, a two-step process, but how do films at this festival get your attention, and then how do you get the airline to actually buy the film?
I think for me, for my business, documentaries are tough in general. I have handled documentaries before. They've done okay, but the bread and butter is really in the feature films, and that's where I go meet with Elisabeth. I've handled movies like Le Dernier Continent, and which was about Greenpeace and stuff like that. They do okay. I mean, they're not huge revenue-generating films. If there was a movie that's more like a family-oriented film that has dolphins in it, and if those dolphins happen to talk, even better.
How about penguins?
Yeah, penguins, those type of movies, then yes, you're going to have airlines like Emirates or that need content for the kids that travel.
So are there, maybe, don't give us too many trade secrets, but are there certain airlines that like certain things? Are there, what is Qantas buy? What is,
Yeah, I mean, so, for example, Virgin Atlantic, very risky what they take. They'll take high action films. You take somebody like Qatar, they're going to be more conservative. They might even ask us to do special edits. And then you have other airlines like Emirates. They take everything, like literally everything you offer, they'll take it. I think they have on board 1,000 movies at one time. So they book I sell about 4 to 5 movies every month, and they buy every single one of them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's also
Well,
Actually,
Yeah.
I actually have a
relationships.
question for you, Paul. I think it's kind of helpful for this audience because I actually do a lot of panels and I teach classes, and one of our topics is about disappearing windows, right? And the effect of streamers on these windows. So, and this is just something for the audience to know. You know, getting your project sold to a streamer obviously would seem great to you, but just know nobody wants to come behind the streamer, right? Using Netflix would be, if you get it to Netflix, that's it. It dies at Netflix. Maybe you'll have a second life behind that, but more often you won't, right? So,
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So back in the day when I was at Sony Pictures, I sold movies like Men in Black, As Good as It Gets, Jerry Maguire. There were very well-respected windows. Theatrical was first. 90 days later, you had airline and hotels. And then after that, you had pay-per-view and then pay television, so forth and so on. Nowadays, with the streamers coming on board, and a lot of producers are anxious to get their return on their investment, they'll sell quickly to like Netflix or Amazon, whatever. The windows are shrinking, and sometimes you'll have movies with day and date where it's released in theaters and it goes to a streamer the same day. To me as a buyer, that devalues the product that I'm potentially going to buy. So if I'm sitting down with somebody at the Cannes Film Festival and they're like, oh yeah, well, we just sold it to Netflix. I'm like, I'm passing. No, thank you. Because at that point, I'm thinking from a business point of view, passengers flying on American Airlines, for example, they can just download it to their phone. American doesn't need to buy it from me anymore, so why would I want it? So and we're seeing a lot of that, the shrinking windows. And even like mini majors like Lionsgate, they'll have a movie that comes out and 30 days later, they'll put it on board airplanes. So even the bigger companies are doing it.
so has your business been affected a lot? Or?
Yes, in a sense that it's harder to get good content because a lot of these films are going to the streamers. Yeah. I mean, there's some big films like you see on Netflix that have their premieres and stuff, big action films and buddy comedies and stuff like that work really well on airlines that Netflix picks up, and we don't have the opportunity to take them anymore. So we find other things, but it does make it challenging.
okay, so for any of the panelists who want to answer, all of you, if you want, what's the best way for a filmmaker to approach a sales agent or an investor, financier, a film institute, a nonprofit, and what kind of materials would they need to present? I mean, is a mood reel, a sizzle reel, a deck? What materials do you need to present to get interest from someone like yourself?
I'll just quickly start. For us, we love to see as much effort going into your baby, right? So if you have storyboarded what this is going to look like, an outline, I mean, obviously you've got the script, but if you're doing a doc, do an outline. But it's all about if you can come with a director, come with cast. So important. Again, the one thing that no one has in this business anymore is time and money. It seems like those are the most, if you've got money, you're going to be in a much better place, and then you're going to latch on to a sales agent or a very seasoned producer, and then we can go and help you attach cast, et cetera. But obviously we've got to see financial records, know that the LLC is already put together, and so that you really have all your ducks in a row. If you don't have the money as of yet, or you're still looking to get a director and cast, then you need to make it as shiny and find your target, know that what your film is, who your audience is, and what lane it's going to be in. Is it going to be a comedy? Is it going to be action? Is it thriller? Is it this? And again, knowing who your audience is going to be. And the one thing that I definitely urge you to do is the larger net your film will attract, as far as who's going to come and see this. Is it going to be, just 70-year-old, Indian males are going to come and watch this? Or is it going to be a 17 to 25 horror enthusiasts? Or is it going to be, culinary women who, whatever, like, know who your audience is. And then also, if you're thinking, okay, there's only that's only a 2% niche versus a 75% niche, you gotta, or a market versus a niche, you gotta really approach and understand when you're saying, here's my script, here's my, this is like a mock-up poster that we'd love to do, here are comparable movies that are very similar in theme, and then box office and things like that, which they, it was made for 1 million, it grossed 12. It was made for 30 million, it grossed 2. Like, know what your film is, who the audience is, and then come in with as much as you can. And yes, sizzle reels are great, mood reels are great.
Lookbooks are great.
Lookbooks are great.
We've been doing, I have about 5 films in development right now, and as soon as we hired someone to make a lookbook for our films, it just brought it to life, and it just jumps out at you, and the people who are looking at it for sales purposes, it really helps.
People like to look at pictures. Well, we're probably close to the point where we can have questions, but I do have one more question for all of you, because it seems to be a topic that is of interest to everybody today. How have you been using, if at all, AI to enhance your job or enhance your finding of films that you might want to represent? Or how have you used AI in your business?
The only way that I've really used AI thus far is only in writing up synopses, and that's it. I have not used it at all, not at this point in time.
I'm a big AI proponent, so there are several things we've done. So as a buyer of films, we are inundated with scripts from people like Elisabeth and her competitors before our market, sometimes 3-4 weeks out. We just can't keep up with it. We used to send it out for coverage, like a 1-page sheet, basically is a synopsis of the film and recommendation. Now we run it through ChatGPT, and we basically give it the parameters of, hey, we're looking for airline-friendly films. This is, is there a lot of sex? Is there any plane crashes, et cetera, excessive violence? It's amazing. Turns it back within seconds, and we can use that as a...
You get a synopsis?
Yeah.
What about an analysis?
It does everything. It'll give us a character breakdown. It'll give us, it'll even tell you, like, okay, for the in-flight industry, you're going to have these issues that you need to consider. It's amazing. It's great. The other thing that I've been doing is pivoting, because the airline business, as you guys know, during COVID was significantly hit. So I basically teamed up with an AI company who are amazing, and they create AI lip syncing for films. So you can literally we took a film in English and turned it into Castilian Spanish for our buyers. They use the actors' voices, and the actors are now speaking in Spanish, moving their lips in Spanish. It's totally lip synced, and it's perfection. It's unbelievable. So I took this opportunity to sit down with my client from Emirates, and I said, look at this. And he said, I want this. I want it now. I want an exclusive. So now what he's doing is we're taking this technology, and he sent us his safety video, in-flight safety video that you sit down, when you get on the plane. And we're creating, the first 2 are Hindi and Vietnamese, And once they get approved with the translations, he's coming back to order 35 languages.
Better hope you don't have any SAG actors in there. Okay?
No. No. It's all clear. It's all getting clear with their talent. And so we're also using this same company to help grow our business, because in our line of work, to create, when Air France wants a French dub and we don't have one, it costs $17,000 to create one. But now we can go to this AI company that I'm working with, and they can create one lip-synced for a portion of the price, a fraction of the price. So we're using AI a lot. And
How about you, Josh? You using AI?
Not really. Well, you of all people should know. In the legal field, what the firm is using AI in our administrative processes, right, to make things more efficient for us in terms of what we do in that day in and day out. But in terms of my clients, I actually wrote 2 articles that's right now in the Practical Law Journal about AI. One that summarizes what we did with SAG, and the other one, the WGA. You know, that's a big no-no for my clients, right? Because we just spent damn near a year fighting against AI. So I use it at work, but I spend all my day fighting against it on behalf of my clients. So.
Okay.
Although, can I say
Yep,
one thing
sure.
super fast about AI? So I have a client who's in the UK, and then I've got another client here in Los Angeles, and I was asked both, listen, I want to know what the popularity of this actor is in, let's call it the Philippines. And I asked the woman who was living in the UK to look it up on her ChatGPT or Grok or Perplexity or whatever it was. I think it was Chat, and then the same thing with the one in LA. And when we asked about the popularity, one of the reasons why I don't use AI is because both of them came back completely different. One said, oh, he's so popular because of X, Y, and Z. And the other one said, absolutely not, because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I don't trust the Waymos, I don't trust the AI stuff. I just don't. The only thing is, if I'm writing a letter and I want to put the letter in and I want it to look maybe a little bit better, that's what I've done, how my AI is. Otherwise, I haven't done it. I'm slow to the boat, I'm sure, but not yet. But everyone I know is using it. Everyone I know is using it.
I'm using it.
But I am very scared about actually putting in scripts and them doing, and in fact, I did have a client say, oh, can you please send me the script? I'm like, you've seen the movie. They're like, yeah, but I need to input the script so I can generate a proper offer to you. I was like, oh my gosh. So it's coming, and that's a US distributor. Can you believe, that's horrible. But I'm scared about the whole, with WGA, I don't know, putting in a script, all of a sudden it becomes proprietary, and then it's more, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what's legal and what's
We've
not.
actually had to go in a proactive against that for my actor clients now, and make sure I add a clause saying that they can't shorten the work period or the number of working days by AI. You still, if they're supposed to work
And they're getting paid by the
25
day.
days, they can't shorten it to 15 and then
Yeah.
put it in an AI clause so that the
Yes.
AI can fill out the rest. And
Yeah.
then with the WGA, with both the SAG and the WGA, our firm has drafted clauses now that says they cannot use their work to train AI, because the more and more AI gets information,
Yeah,
the more robust it gets. And then,
Absolutely.
you're just helping yourself eliminate your own job.
100%. And that's, very scary. But it's true. Putting a script in, it's so easy to get it out instead of giving it to somebody for coverage.
Yeah.
But then I think in the future, you got to be careful about that. I don't know. It's crazy. But it's so easy, literally, this client was like, can you please give it so I can generate an offer for you? I was like, that's the first time I've heard of this. I was like, you can watch the film. Can't you make an analysis by yourself? Nope. I was like, all right. Anyway.
All right, let's open it up to some questions. Anybody? No? Anybody? All right, go.
Okay, we already have a film here in this film festival, and I understand that when we go into the distribution is before that we are here in the festival. We need to go when we are creating or we are in the post-production. This is the moment that we need to approach.
Ideally.
Okay, but if we are right now here and we have which options we have when we are here and we don't have a distribution company, which options we have.
Well, I think obviously Greg Reitman, he's got access to different distributors and people who can review the film. And I think when you get the festival laurels, it definitely elevates your film. The fact that your film got selected to be here, there's a lot of films on which he passes, and the whole selection committee passes. So already there's a certain stamp of approval just for attending a film festival. And you get much more exposure coming here than you would have not submitting, for sure. And that is the hope and the dream, is to ideally have somebody come and watch your film, word of mouth, articles written. And then again, I think maybe because of AI, this may end up helping in the future. You know, more AI, like, hey, I want to see a documentary on, you know, whatever it would be. And there'll be, all of a sudden, this accessible encyclopedia for people to use as a research tool to then get access to your film and to find out who you are and blah, 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 and how can they contact you, you know? So I'm hopeful that that's really going to be something that with AI, just because they'll take, you know, information from various film festivals of like, what films are not, you know, have no distribution? And people could be a lot of, you know, distributors could really start to use it that way, I would assume.
What's the name of your film? What is it about, and what language is it in?
Okay, my film is Territory of Puloy. It's a film about the crisis of water that is facing the community, the Guayú community, an indigenous community in Colombia. It's in Spanish with subtitles in English. We're going to have a film tomorrow at 5 here in the auditory. And there are another question that I have too, because today I have a panel here and I talk about my film. And there was some students from the university, and we may be going to have a reflection with them after the film. And this is really that I really appreciate. And
Yeah.
and maybe there are another opportunity for our film with education and screening.
100%.
Maybe you know something about and how we can approach to this kind of distribution.
Absolutely, with education and with universities and things like that, or even sometimes military bases, things like that. Those are all different
Outlets.
avenues, for distribution. And the education sect is actually a really good one. They don't pay very much, but collectively, it all adds up very quickly. And I think if you're unable to get, let's say, an all rights distributor on board, it is really good to try and go through the education means.
Non-theatrical,
Non-theatrical.
right?
Yep.
Now, you mean maybe you were in that business. Are there,
Way back when.
are there, you know, reputable non-theatrical sales agents out there?
Yeah,
that-
but I was going to suggest that maybe if she Googled like documentary sales agent, like companies like Dog Wolf.
Yeah.
Dog Wolf their specialty is documentaries. And you could submit it to them, to their acquisitions person. Just go on their website. They have an acquisitions contact. And you could submit it, and they would consider it. There's lots of documentary sales agents. You can go to a film market and look for them. The problem is at a film market, the sales agent time is very valuable, and they're trying to sell their film to buyers, and so they don't really want to meet with filmmakers at that time. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
Pretty much.
So
The last day. The last day
is the best opportunity for you, like at a film market. You know, you could do one locally. Like, are you based here in San Diego?
No, I'm based in Germany.
Oh, I think there's some documentary film sales agents
Yeah.
based out of Germany. Yeah, I mean, maybe what you should do is go to the Berlin Film Festival in February.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's lots of documentary sales agents, even at Berlinale, and they'll probably be in the Martin Gropius Bau building, and you can just go hit them up and just say, "Here's my film. Here's my film."
There's also an independent film festival in Berlin that's kind of tied to the Berlinale that I think is in June. I'll have to think of, let me do some research because I know
There's also
that there's
the
something that's good.
International Documentary Association, and that's a really good organization. They're based in LA, I think. And I think it costs $100 to join. It's not very expensive. But they have tremendous resources, and they'll have a list of all the film festivals that take docs, all the international sales agents that sell docs, and it's definitely worthwhile to join that organization, for sure.
Do you know how much a subscription to Sinando is?
I don't know, we always get it for free.
Okay,
with
so
our badge.
Sinando, Cinando, is the industry like database, and you can pay. It's probably like $200 a year, and you can actually go on there and look for. You can filter out sales agents and then documentary film, and literally it'll give you a list, and from there you can actually see all the contacts and reach out to every single one of them. And
By the way, if you actually register at Berlin or Cannes or Toronto,
Free
you get
subscription.
Sinando for free.
free.
Yeah.
So you get two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
But Sinando's like a wealthy, like
Wealth of
there's
knowledge.
over 10,000 companies in there. So use the filter to really narrow it down what you're trying to do.
And the other good thing is if you are able to get some type of distribution through education, it qualifies under fair use. So it won't stop you from getting exclusive distribution deals from other distributors.
Wait, what was the first part you said? What qualifies as fair use?
Education.
Oh, education, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
great.
like, let's say she does go to Netflix. She can still get a distribution deal to show the film at University of San Diego and won't be in breach of her contract to Netflix.
If you're looking for non-theatrical distribution, like what Harris was saying, there's a company called Swank Onboard, and they specialize in colleges, hospitals, prisons, all sorts of things. That's their specialty. Yeah.
Military. Sure. Ships.
Yeah.
So we have time for one more question. Anybody? Oh, we got two. All right, two more. What is the pros and cons of making a deal with either a Netflix or one of the other airline distributors?
I had somebody contact me earlier this week, actually, and he had a film that he wanted me to consider. And I asked him, do you have a sales agent? He said, no. I said, you're trying to sell this yourself? He said, yes. And I said, well, you shouldn't be talking to me first, because if you do an airline deal with me and I put it on airlines, before you get a deal with another sales agent who's going to want to sell it around the world, you're going to kill your film. I'm like, you need to bring longevity to your film. Get a sales agent, let them go through the window or the process of selling their film to people for all around the world, and then I will come on board for airlines, but I'm going to respect the window, because if not, I told them, you're going to kill your deals. So the best strategy is to get a sales agent. They're going to guide you through the whole process.
And it'll basically be your film which will dictate what rights get exploited. So, because if you're going to take a film out theatrically, a film festival is different than taking it out theatrically. So getting into a film festival is not distribution, it's just like an accolade, right? And if it's the type of film that distributors feel that people will go and see, they will put their time and money behind it, get it slotted into the theater, and then go. But it takes a lot of money and resources to get it so people will actually know it even exists, to come to the theater and not to hang out at home. So it's got to be very, very much that type of film. And then the other thing is, if it's going to go straight to a Netflix, that'd be great. Right now, Netflix doesn't really buy that many independent films. You're going to go to the other lower, not lower, just smaller or free VOD platforms. Like right now, Pluto and Tubi and other sort of free platforms are buying. But again, that's like last on the train, and you want to do your TVODs first, like in Amazon Prime, and then you'd go to a subscription VOD, and then you'd kind of go into that free VOD, advertising-based revenue, But you got to understand, because if you go first to the AVOD and your film's really good, Netflix won't buy it after it goes to AVOD. Whereas Netflix will buy first if it's really good and for them. And I say really good, that's such a discriminatory word. It depends on what side of the bed they wake up on. That's it. It's like college acceptances, let's be honest.
One more question.
My question is in general about prediction. How do you feel this audience became wider in the future about blue water and environment in general? Why really will buy more sincere to feel that it's very important?
There's an absolute need for passionate filmmakers who are basically not exploiting, but really showcasing what is happening to our world, because it's an education that is not addressed, unfortunately, the way it needs to be, and the way that the biggest mouthpiece is literally creating a film that can then be seen through festivals and then distributed around the world. And it's an education piece that leaves a legacy for our future generations, right? And so that hopefully people can correct their behaviors in the way they consume and the way they, discard. I think it's so important, and because sometimes people just think that like, oh, this doesn't matter what I'm doing, what I'm wearing, what I'm tossing out the window, what I'm, anything. And so it is so important, and these sort of environmental-based film festivals are all over the country, and something like Blue Water, which is a newer one, it's building up. It's getting a lot of benefactors to come in and to bring in people to really help filmmakers, because it is so important. And as Harris had actually lined up all these different foundations and grants, which are accessible, those are usually big families that are literally putting money aside so that, again, it's to help the earth or to help humanity, to help all these different people, correct? So it is, these small film festivals are where it kind of all begins. It's like the seed to help grow, and then hopefully a distributor comes on and listens and then, shows it. So, but we need people to also do the heavy lifting to help let people know about their films, and to, have people go and support them when they're in the theater, or support them when they're, on a TV station, on a streamer. And it takes not just villages, but cities of people to, create these movements. And then it can actually go and also help create change in government at the end of the day, all over the world, wherever you're doing it. These films are extremely important. Of course.
Question about bonds.
About what?
Bonds, I mean instruments, financial instruments, which usually can be very wide, like, I don't know, history of America about bonds. Can people invest money in financial instruments which will be very widespread if connect with blue economy, blue water? It's more about financial maybe question.
So, and I'm so sorry, I didn't understand. Is it ponds?
Bonds.
Oh, bonds?
It's financial instrument like, I don't know.
Funds.
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 Market very widespread in the financial market. Like, I don't know, not equity, but more like low risk for investor. Like, people will buy financial instrument which they will know directly where money goes.
Are you asking about using bonds to finance a film?
Yeah.
The viability of it?
Yeah. How it's in the future, I mean, is it possible, or you don't think it's
Look, I will tell you, there are funds of people who want to get these tax incentives, and they combine their money into one fund, which then invests in a film, and they get their pro rata share of the tax write-off. That's something that exists now.
Is it viable? It depends on the success of the film. And the question is if it's something that you're trying to make a return on, because some people will say, oh, we're trying to get a 20% return on our money. It's not always the case, like at all. And it's, you have people who are like, we're trying to raise a film fund and we're going to give you this much return. Really, nobody knows what the return's going to be. And it's just, I hate to say it, smoke and mirrors. You could get 120% return on your money if the film does extremely well. Or you could lose everything and then get sued and lose everything plus. So but yeah, these instruments for these film funds, there are tons of film funds that do exist. There used to be sovereign funds that came out of Korea. There's different film funds everywhere. And the idea is people are doing it also for the passion aspect of it, because they want to have a legacy of film. You leave it, behind. Oh, I was part of this. I did this. But it's so subjective, I think.
All right, we got the signal. Thank you, panelists. Appreciate that coming down here today. Very, very much. I know we all were happy to have you. And thank the festival for putting us on the program. And wish you a great festival. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. And I want to see your film. Sounds great.